Hi, I'm Elise Bonarelli with Vector Space.
And I'm Adam Sponarelli, and we want to share the story of the Intubation box that we designed in response to COVID-19.
This started with a request from a local doctor who we had worked with previously making face shields. So he saw a need for intubation boxes at his workplace, and he reached out to us at Vector Space to see if that was possibly something that we could make. One of the beautiful things about makerspaces is that we are a community-driven organization full of all kinds of tools and all kinds of materials. And so when he reached out with this project that we've never done before and we'd never seen before, we were able to quickly pivot and to pick it up and give it a try.
We started by making 2 different prototypes based on open source designs.
What's kind of amazing is that Adam finished putting together the first prototype that same evening and dropped a key to the makerspace off on the doctor's front porch, so the next morning he could stop by the makerspace, grab the prototype, take it to the hospital the very next day, and get started working with it and testing it.
And then he sent us a picture of it in the operating room that morning.
Which was super cool to see. Once the anesthesiologist had a chance to work with the box and really test it in the hospital, they got back to us with a couple small changes. There were some dimensions that they thought could be a little bit modified to fit patients better. And they also had one fairly large request that the design be recreated so that it would fold. And they wanted to be able to transport it easier between operating rooms and different places at the hospital. So they, based on a video from Emory and Georgia Tech, they had come up with a folding intubation box, and so we took inspiration from that on our second prototype.
We designed the box in FreeCAD, starting with dimensions based on other open source designs as well as what we could figure out from the Emory and Georgia Tech video. So we started with the front panel where the handholds are. And then came the left and right panels with a handle at the top. Finally, the top of the box needed slots for the handles to come through. And it's these slots that give the box rigidity when it's assembled. We also added these glove flanges later on based on feedback from the doctor, needing something to help hold the gloves in place. Because of the setting where these would be used, we thought it was important to minimize the number of parts that went into each box. So we didn't want to have to keep track of screws that might pull out and get lost in the operating room. And we also don't have an enormous amount of experience with plastics. So honestly, we weren't entirely sure how well a wood screw was going to hold in a sheet of polycarbonate.
We ended up using a single part plastic hinge that could be chemically bonded to the other parts of the box.
We ended up using polycarbonate instead of acrylic as the material for the box for a few reasons. One is that it's much stronger than acrylic, and what we really don't want to have happen is for this box to shatter when it's being used. And the other reason is that we've found that it was a little bit easier to clean without damaging the clarity of the plastic.
Because we used polycarbonate, this meant that our design could not be laser cut at all, which is one way that some other folks had been making these boxes. So we ended up making the entire box just in the wood shop with wood tools. We started at the panel saw to cut down big 4x8 sheets and then ran them through the table saw to get them the sizes that they needed to be. We used a drill press to get the holes that the arms would go through, and then a router to route out the handles. Once we finalized the design and put a box together, we again sent it off to be tested, and the feedback was great. They loved it. It was fantastic. It was easy to move. It worked well. They were able to clean it, and it really just checked all the boxes that they were looking for. So the next step in the process was building more of these, and that is when one of our neighborhood companies stepped in and helped us fund these. So there's a donut shop down the street that wanted to help in some way, and so they created a Box It Up campaign, which worked really well with their to-go boxes that they were sending out. So they were able to raise $600, which covered the cost of materials for us to make more boxes and send them out to the hospital. Once we had a design that worked, it was really important to us that we pay it forward to makers around the country so that they could replicate this design in their own spaces for their own hospitals. When we started with face shields, we were able to capitalize on the work that makers all over the country had been doing for a few weeks before we needed face shields here in our community, and it made it so much easier for us to have a design that was tested, know what materials to use, and to just get right in and start making face shields. So it was important that we were able to do the same with this box. So we took the design and put it on GitHub.
In that GitHub repository, you can find photos of the box, instructions on how to cut the parts and assemble the parts, as well as all the CAD files and even the CAM files. And of course, if you have any modifications to suggest, please be sure to give us feedback.
Thank you guys for watching, and thanks to our friends at makerspaces all over the country that have also helped with these contributions in so many significant ways, and to our friends at Make for putting together Virtually Maker Faire and letting us all get together to share.